Welcome back. My name is Nina Means, Director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator, and you're watching ACCFI Presents. We are in our fourth and final segment with Angie Ramirez, who is the Head of Development at Stitch Texas here in Austin. And Angie, so happy to have you back. Can't wait to get into this conversation we've got teed up
Me
for
too.
today. Absolutely. So we are, it's 2021. 2020 is behind us, but we're still feeling the effects. COVID had an indelible mark, on the way that we work and the way our business operates. Can you just kind of unpack for me, I know that we had kind of our, side conversation about this earlier. Can you tell us how you've seen COVID impact, what we do in apparel manufacturing?
Yeah. So the things that that we have really noticed is, one, well, first of all, so COVID, first hit, and it's funny. I had some friends visiting from Virginia, just very, very recently, and I was telling them, I was like, here in Austin, we knew it was getting real when South by got shut down, right? Like that was like, oh, this is really a thing. And it was funny because my friends in Virginia said, oh, well, that's how we knew it was real too, was South by got canceled. So yeah, that's just how far reaching that is. And we just thought, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna survive this? What is gonna happen? And within a month, 2 months maybe, our inquiries just started increasing and increasing and increasing. And we have been busier during a pandemic than we ever have, which is not something that, any of us saw coming. And then at the same time, what we were seeing was, one of the things that we touched on before, with all of everything that we've learned about how many things can be done remotely, which is fantastic when you're talking about people, driving less, forget about the environmental aspect of that, but just like the cost of, running and owning a car. But, when you're talking about people that own factories, nothing can happen unless people can show up for work. And so what was great was that, before the pandemic, we had, quite a few factories kind of teetering on making it. And then, all of the PPE contracts came through, which was such an incredible shot in the arm, for all of them, which was great. We want to see those skills being kept up. We want to see these factories staying online. But also what it meant was that we all of a sudden were having a much more difficult time finding factories to take smaller jobs, which is kind of our bread and butter because we're working with people that are just starting. And it's always smart to start, as small as you can when you're doing that first production run. And like we said, sometimes, we're doing a lot of apparel, but we're also doing other types of sewn products that might be smaller. And so the effect, it was a very interesting combination of lots of people with great ideas, because you're talking about people that maybe have been laid off from their jobs and, well, I've always had this idea, might as well look into making it come to reality, right? But then we have factories that now are like not wanting to take some projects that they would have taken before because they're really busy making PPE. And now, the PPE has tapered off, but we still have, we're finding it more difficult to source production and factories that will meet those smaller MOQs. And some of that, what we're being told, often has to do with, even though that initial PPE influx kept everybody in the factory, then that ended, then people, went on unemployment, and they probably reevaluated what they want to do with their lives,
Right.
as they should. And so now the factory got this great shot in the arm, so they didn't have to shut down, but now might not have all of the employees that they had before. And so that has been a real challenge. And another thing that we've said, what I always said before the pandemic was that I heard every day, I want my product USA made. This is, really important. Well, it's just on steroids now, right? I mean, we hear that even more now. But I have been saying for years that there's so many impacts of that most of our production and manufacturing went offshore. There's impacts on environment, there's impacts on people's health and safety and welfare. And not least of which, one of those huge impacts is people's expectations and understanding of what it should cost to make something. And so the conversation that I was having with people wanting to produce products before the pandemic is even, tenfold now. And so we're having to have so many conversations. And we've just done, and we're not even going to pick too much on, domestic production versus overseas, and make it more about really what it's about, which is, exploitation of labor wherever it exists.
I couldn't agree more.
And we have just, and the disservice that we've done, besides the humanitarian impact of that, is that we have such a disconnect between the work that goes into it. And so you're talking about a type of work that, right, mostly female driven, and that already was never 100% fully valued. Now the value of that has just plummeted, right? And so I sometimes I just feel like a broken record, making people understand that how that the reason you can get a t-shirt for $2 is because somebody's being sacrificed for that. And it's that disconnect when we just don't understand the labor that goes into something. And that said, there are there's just and I can sit on my soapbox and I can preach about that, but we all participate, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't. We all do. And there are some products that are never going to be able to be made in the United States legally, and be sold at a price that makes the business owner sustainable, at a price that the person who wants it or needs it is either willing to afford or can. And I would say at the top of that list, okay, back on the soapbox for a second, but at the top of that list is, the one of the shiny examples that just makes me crazy. I have this conversation every day is scrubs, right? I mean, you're talking about, necessary equipment for an entire workforce that keeps all of us going. Mm-hmm. And yet all of that equipment, because their clothing they wear is a part of their equipment, and all of that equipment has to be made overseas probably by people that aren't being treated very well, in order for the people that need it to be able to afford it to go to work.
Wow. Wow.
And
when you put it all in that, context, it's
yeah. Well, there's
wow.
The other layer to that is that the people that understand the needs of what this equipment, right? And so this is where I diverge a little bit from the fashion industry. We're talking equipment now. The people that are actually using it, who we rely on every single day, know the most about it. And so I'm contacted every single day by people who are in careers where they need this equipment and it's not functioning for them. And at the top of that list is African American women. At the top of the list, I hear them from every single day. These are women that wear this up, and they're saying this equipment, apparel, is not meeting what I need to do, and I have to wear it every single day. And they're saying, and these are women that understand what it needs to do, and they also understand. They do understand the labor of a mainly female labor force, right? And them being treated properly. And so they also are passionate about both the people in the medical field that need to have equipment that works for them, and the people that are making it need to be protected. And so it's heartbreaking for me every day to have these conversations of that they are going to have to send this overseas in order to be able to have stuff made for their own people, to be able to utilize. I'm not going to pretend to understand all the ins and outs of it, but I will say it seems to me when we're talking about, government subsidies for different things, I feel like the scrubs arena is a real missed opportunity for both for people in the United States that understand this space, that know how to redesign it, for it to be made in the United States, and then be able to be provided to the people that need this stuff, but that are not making, surgeon salaries. Right?
Absolutely. Everyone's not a doctor in scrubs. There are a lot of people who are required to wear scrubs.
Absolutely. That's kind of a roundabout. I know we started talking about COVID, but it's some things that changed. But I would say more than the things that it just changed, it just amplified. It amplified the issues that domestic factories have with having labor. It amplified people wanting to have their own product, either because they could improve it or because they want to be more of an independent person and maybe not as beholden to a large company that they might be working for. That was amplified. Another huge effect, I mean, this is not going to be anything new to you, probably anyone watching, but the change in the way that we dress, right? We're seeing a lot of inquiries with projects that are about different ways of dressing in this different kind of this new world that we're in. Working remotely, in different ways. And I think it's really interesting. Another issue that is really more and more in the forefront is, oddly enough, gender identity, right? And a lot of that has really meshed a lot with the different way that people think about clothing now since COVID. I mean, the conversations I have with people and the way that they conceptualize the clothing that they wear, there's something about this pandemic that has made people understand what they wear in a different way. And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what that is, but I know it's a thing because I have this conversation over and over and over again. And so I've had some fascinating conversations with people about products I wish I could tell you, I'll tell you in secret, but I wish I could tell everybody about the specifics about these projects, because they're so cool and they're so fascinating. And they are born from this sort of kind of slap in the face we've all gotten from this pandemic, and either rethinking their lives, rethinking their clothing, or maybe they feel now that they have permission to explore something that they've always thought about. You know, like I would rather have a conversation and get to work on a project with a young person who might be have very, very new, very different ideas about the way that clothes should function on their bodies in the public space, and having to do with maybe their gender or maybe their identity, and how that conversation goes, and sometimes it leads to really complex projects, and sometimes it's a very simple project, but it's just within a different arena. And those are the kinds of projects that are just more fulfilling and interesting to us than, you know, sort of getting that next big fashion brand on the hook.
Absolutely. Honestly, I appreciate how you've connected the COVID experience for designers and for the customer. You know, there's so much that's connected through that. The ability to pay, the willingness to pay, the where it's being made, how it's being made, what we're paying attention to, how it's going on our body, how we feel about it. I mean, we've observed so much more, I think, psychological, I wouldn't say interference, but interaction between what we put on and what our choices are in the marketplace. I think a lot of times people have been kind of, you know, just kind of mindlessly purchasing, but in a space like this, I think a lot of things have become more front of mind, a bit more mindful, especially as we're kind of coming out of, you know, people are kind of moving outside spaces now, you know, not just these interior spaces.
I wonder how much of it has to do also with most of the thoughts we had about what we wore before the pandemic being about the external expectations, you know, and then you take a lot of those away, and now it's about not just comfort, and that's a huge one, but you know, it's a slippery slope from what am I comfortable in to how do I identify, you know. And so it switches. The psychology of it is really fascinating.
It is. Oh, I wish we had more time. I'm like, next week. And it's like, no, we've come to the end of our segment. So there's so much to talk about with you, Angie. I appreciate the depth of your insight, you know, and bringing these topics to the forefront. You know, manufacturing isn't just manufacturing. It's all the collateral experience jobs and, you know, kind of ripple effects through our industry that happen, you know, overseas and here. And there's, you know, the environmental impacts and then the cost impacts and the labor. I mean, there's so many things that are, you know, kind of intertwined in these conversations. So, you know, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here at the Fashion Incubator. We really appreciate your expertise. And we look forward to working with you and Stitch Texas in the near future.
Us too. Thank you, Nina.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. This has been ACCFI Presents, and I have enjoyed our conversations here with Angie Ramirez from Stitch Texas, but we have, like all good things, you know, they have to come to an end. But again, we want to thank our guests, and guys, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out our social media, definitely check us out on YouTube at ACC Fashion Incubator, but also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We would love to get a chance to connect with you. If you want to send us a quick note, you can send us an email at fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. We'll see you guys next time.